They said the monarchy stood united, but behind the palace walls, tensions brewed like a storm waiting to break. When whispers of a forbidden signature reached royal ears, the entire institution trembled. Why would Prince William dare to alter sacred coronation documents? And why did Princess Anne, the family's iron spine, choose to be present when it happened? Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The surface of royal life had always been polished to perfection, every bow, every balcony wave, every coordinated portrait crafted to convey the image of an unbreakable House of Windsor. But inside the palace, those closest to the crown knew something was shifting. For years, William played the part of the future king with dutiful grace. But those who watched closely noticed the subtle signs, how his gaze would narrow when Camilla spoke during council briefings, how he'd retreat early from joint appearances where Charles and Camilla took center stage. It was not resentment born overnight. It was the quiet build-up of a son who never forgot what his mother endured. Behind the gold-leaf doors of the Privy Council chamber, an invisible fracture line stretched between generations. Charles, ever the traditionalist, believed in maintaining the status quo, leaning heavily on Camilla as both partner and confidant. Camilla, once a polarizing figure, had gained her own loyal circle within the royal structure. But that circle, William began to suspect, had grown too powerful, too embedded in decisions meant to shape the future of the crown. Whispers began circulating among senior aides. A draft had been seen, a coronation document not yet public, one that bore names and titles, and one name in particular was allegedly being re-evaluated. It was Princess Anne's sudden appearance at Kensington that truly stirred speculation. The Princess Royal, known for her no-nonsense silence, rarely visited without cause. But her arrival was unannounced, her expression unreadable. She met with William for nearly 3 hours, no aides present, no phones allowed. When she emerged, she declined all questions and drove herself away, alone. The next morning, several members of Camilla's administrative staff were reassigned, without explanation. One even left their post entirely, citing increasing internal volatility. Then came the ripple no one could ignore: increased security presence at the Royal Archives. Camilla noticed it immediately. She inquired, only to be told vaguely about routine protocol enhancements. But she wasn't convinced. A senior aide overheard her muttering in the hallway. "They're preparing something I haven't signed off on." In the days that followed, murmurs turned into palpable dread. Words like reclassification, amendment, and succession wording began echoing through staff corridors. One clerk confessed to seeing William in a restricted wing of the archive wing at dusk, flanked by Anne and 2 senior legal officers. The coronation documents, historic, revered, and binding, were not just ceremonial. They were the blueprint of the future, the monarchy's promise to the world. And if that blueprint was being altered without public knowledge, it meant the entire direction of the crown could be changing. What had once been considered unchangeable was now in flux. Those who had grown comfortable in their future roles were suddenly gripped by uncertainty. Something monumental was underway, and the monarchy's invisible fractures were no longer just hidden cracks. They were widening. But the truth behind the signature wasn't merely about power, it was personal, and it had been building for years. To the public, Prince William played the dutiful heir, but behind closed doors, his resentment towards Camilla simmered like a volcano sealed by royal duty. What started as discomfort turned into defiance, and it all traces back to a moment in his childhood that even the press missed. It wasn't just about titles or roles. For William, it was about memory, his mother's memory. He had watched Diana, vulnerable and radiant, shrink into shadows as Camilla slowly stepped into a space that once belonged to her. While the world debated forgiveness, William lived in a palace that whispered betrayal. No matter how polished Camilla's public image became, no matter how often Charles insisted the past had been laid to rest, William never forgot the raw pain etched into his mother's final years. The loss wasn't just personal, it was historical, and history, William believed, must not repeat itself under the guise of reconciliation. The resentment didn't erupt overnight. It built slowly, layer by layer. After Diana's death, William had hoped for distance, some protective boundary between the past and whatever future Charles imagined with Camilla. But instead, he watched her name climb. From consort to companion, from partner to future queen. Private moments at Highgrove became unbearable when Charles deferred to Camilla's opinion on matters of statecraft. Advisors began attending more meetings at her request. William was no longer just his father's son, he was an heir being edged aside. In private, those closest to William revealed a deepening frustration. He refused to call Camilla Queen, even behind closed doors. During one council meeting, when a policy proposal was referred to as approved by the King and Queen, William reportedly corrected it, "You mean the King and his wife." The air froze. That one sentence said more than volumes. Camilla, in William's eyes, had never earned the crown, and no decree could force him to believe otherwise. The breaking point came at Sandringham. It was Christmas. The royal family gathered under the illusion of tradition, but beneath the decorations and carols, tensions reached their peak. A confrontation between William and Camilla erupted behind the tapestries of the drawing room. Sources say the future king told her bluntly, "You may have rewritten my father's story, but you won't rewrite mine." Charles, blindsided, reportedly refused to speak to William for days. The monarchy, always poised for the public, was privately at war with itself. Camilla, in response, didn't stay passive. If anything, her influence sharpened. Rumours swirled that she began lobbying to diminish Catherine's visibility during upcoming coronation plans. She pushed to limit Catherine's ceremonial exposure, suggesting more emphasis be placed on Charles's bloodline rather than his heir's wife. William saw it for what it was, an attempt to sideline the very woman he saw as the crown's future. What Camilla failed to realize was that William had already begun moving in silence, preparing to make decisions no one could veto. And when Princess Anne began asking questions no one dared voice aloud, the rift found an unlikely witness. Princess Anne had stayed quiet for years, but now she was done playing referee. When even she, the stoic, loyal defender of monarchy, said, "Enough is enough," the consequences were irreversible. What did Anne witness that made her side with William against her own brother's wife? For decades, Anne had been the monarchy's unshakable constant. Never entangled in scandal, never swept up in palace gossip, she had maintained a reputation as the family's moral anchor, steadfast, dutiful, impartial. But neutrality has its limits. And for Anne, that boundary was finally crossed when the whispers became too loud to ignore. For months, she had heard fragmented accounts from longtime aides and equerries, stories of Camilla's growing reach within the palace, of decisions being redirected, of traditions subtly rewritten. At first, Anne dismissed them as the usual turbulence of succession, but one briefing changed everything. A trusted legal advisor confided that Camilla had attempted to revise ceremonial precedents, downplaying Catherine's role in future state functions. That revelation shattered Anne's silence. The turning point arrived in the form of a sealed letter, one Anne had kept locked in a private drawer since the Queen's passing. Elizabeth II had left very few personal instructions, but to Anne, she wrote with unmistakable clarity, "Guard the future with resolve. If clarity of succession is ever at risk, do not hesitate to act. The crown must not confuse sentiment with structure." Anne read those words again and again. The Queen hadn't named names, but the message was unmistakable. It was not about love or second chances, it was about legacy, about protecting the monarchy's core identity from being reshaped by influence that hadn't earned its place through history or service. So Anne did what she rarely did, she confronted Charles. Behind closed doors at Balmoral, voices were raised. A nearby staffer later revealed hearing Anne's final words before storming out, "She was meant to stand beside you, not after you." That night, Anne drove herself back to Windsor, refusing the usual escort. A single car, no security detail. What happened during that solitary journey was never fully shared, but a source close to her claimed she wept for the first time in years. Not for herself, not even for William, but for the institution she had spent a lifetime defending, now being bent in directions the Queen never intended. The next morning, she arrived unannounced at Kensington Palace. No formalities, just a quiet meeting with William that stretched for hours. She laid out everything, the briefings, the letter, the confrontation. And then came the words that would change everything. "I'll stand with you, but it must be done by your hand." She wouldn't sign the document. She wouldn't lead the rebellion, but she would witness it. She would stand behind him when the storm came. That was her line, and once she crossed it, there was no turning back. With Anne's silent blessing and the Queen's buried warning, William walked a path few dared to tread. Beneath Buckingham's stone halls lies a vault most royal aides only whisper about. It's here William requested access, and what he found inside shook even the most seasoned palace officials. A single clause, long overlooked, gave him everything he needed to act. The Royal Coronation Protocol Archive is no ordinary filing room. It is the monarchy's most sacred repository, safeguarded by centuries of silence, bound by parchment and wax, and restricted to a handful of living eyes. It is here, in a chamber buried beneath ceremony and secrecy, where the monarchy records its intentions for the future. Not just pageantry, but power, codified, planned, and protected. And now, William had been granted entry. But only after Anne personally signed the clearance request, breaking a decades-old tradition that no heir enters alone. That signature, though silent, carried thunder. She would not wield the pen herself, but she would bear witness to what was about to unfold. What William was looking for wasn't obvious. He wasn't after a proclamation or a crown design. He was searching for a clause, one that many assumed had been quietly updated years ago. But it hadn't. Deep within the coronation protocols, buried beneath ceremonial hierarchies and title justifications, lay a document created in the shadow of Princess Diana's death. It was a contingency plan designed to ease public tension, to honor a mourning nation's memory, and it had declared that Camilla, should she ever stand beside the king, would do so as princess consort. Not queen, that distinction had mattered once, but over time it had faded from public dialogue. Everyone assumed it had been amended, overwritten by Charles's later declarations, but it hadn't. No new documentation, no legal update. The clause remained, silent, untouched, binding. The document also included a critical expiration clause, one that activated upon Queen Elizabeth II's passing, yet it had never been revoked or reworded. And therein lay William's weapon. Under royal prerogative, the heir apparent possesses dormant authority, archaic but real. One of those powers includes the right to invoke succession clarity in cases where coronation language remains unresolved. Rarely used, never public, but it was written. William didn't just find a loophole, he found a door, left ajar by neglect and sealed with tradition. All he had to do was step through it. For a moment, the weight of what he held froze him. This wasn't just about rewriting a document. This was about challenging the public arc of forgiveness that had brought Camilla to her present standing. But he knew what he was doing. And more importantly, he knew why. The monarchy had drifted too far from the legacy his mother had been denied. This was his line in the sand. And with Anne present to confirm procedural legality, he invoked the ancient authority afforded to the future king. The clause was acknowledged. The discretionary powers were activated. A process centuries old had begun again. But William knew power on paper wasn't enough. The signing had to be witnessed, and the witness had to be Anne. No cameras, no advisors, just one heir, one pen, one unbreakable sister. Behind locked doors, a document centuries in the making was altered in silence. And when William's pen touched parchment, the fate of Camilla and the crown changed forever. The night was carefully chosen. No state functions, no public appearances, just the quiet hum of protocol moving beneath the surface. Windsor Castle, though steeped in tradition, became the setting for something unprecedented. A secret late-night meeting had been authorized, but only for two people: Prince William, future king, and Princess Anne, the only member of the family whose loyalty was unquestioned and whose presence would render the act legitimate in the eyes of history. No one else was informed. Not Charles, not Camilla, not even the palace's most trusted legal clerks. This wasn't a meeting, it was a reckoning. Anne took the lead, opening the file and reading aloud the revised clause with cold precision. Her name shall no longer appear in coronation designations henceforth. The room, though silent, seemed to echo with the weight of those words. For a moment, William hesitated. His hand hovered over the page, pen gripped tightly, not from doubt, but from the understanding that history was about to be rewritten. One stroke of ink could not undo decades, but it could alter what came next. And so, he signed not with hesitation, but with inherited pain and hardened clarity. The hand may have trembled, but the will behind it did not. When he looked up, Anne didn't speak immediately. Instead, she closed the file slowly, as if sealing the truth itself. Then came the words she had held back for too long. "You've done what must be done." It wasn't praise, it wasn't absolution. It was recognition of duty, of cost, of finality. What they had just executed wasn't rebellion. It was restoration, a silent correction to a future that had been quietly manipulated in the shadows. The royal seal was then pressed into wax, binding the amendment into permanence. With that single act, Camilla's name, once poised to be etched alongside William's in the sacred record of ascension, was gone. Erased, not out of vengeance, but out of resolve. And while no grand announcement followed, the ripple was immediate. Overnight, subtle shifts occurred within palace operations. Aides once assigned to Camilla's ceremonial duties were reassigned without explanation. Event briefings changed tone. Uniformed guards received amended security protocols. Her portrait, previously prepared for certain public installations, was quietly moved to a private archive. No one in the outside world could see it yet, but something had changed. The crown had been tilted, its weight redistributed. William had not just made a legal decision, he had declared, without uttering a word, that the future would not be built upon blurred legacies. The silence surrounding the act was deafening. No press release. No leak. Not yet. But those who worked closest to the heart of the monarchy could feel it. A shift in the air. A tightening in the halls. And those who had protected the old order began to grow nervous. But secrets signed in silence have a way of escaping the shadows, and this one didn't stay hidden for long. She thought she had weathered every storm, but nothing prepared Camilla for this. The woman once crowned beside a king was now erased from the next coronation, and when she confronted Charles, the palace shook with the sound of betrayal. It began with a whisper. An unsigned note slipped into her personal correspondence. No name, no seal. Just 10 words scrawled in deliberate haste. Check the archives. You've been removed from the final plan. At first, she dismissed it as cruel fiction, the work of some disgruntled former aide, but something in her gut said otherwise. The unease had been building for days. Advisors becoming distant. Staff reassignments carried out without her signature. Doors that once opened effortlessly now required explanations. When she demanded clarification, the answers were vague, hesitant, and then silence. That silence was deafening. Camilla stormed into Charles's study at Clarence House, the note clenched in her fist. She demanded answers, but Charles stared back with confusion, perhaps even fear. When she told him what had been done, what William had done, his expression collapsed. The king had been blindsided. He hadn't been consulted. He hadn't even been warned. Camilla's voice cracked as she accused William of erasing her existence. The woman who had been mocked, challenged, and eventually embraced by a kingdom now found herself cut away from its future with the stroke of a pen. It was not just betrayal, it was humiliation. Charles tried to console her, but his words rang hollow. She had stood beside him through exile and ascension, through scandal and redemption. And now, when history was meant to validate her journey, it was being rewritten behind her back. For the first time since marrying into the firm, Camilla saw the crown not as a shield but as a weapon turned against her. And the one wielding it was the very man she had toasted on his wedding day, the son she had tried to accept, the heir she never thought would challenge her right to stand beside the throne. Palace staff later reported that Camilla did not leave Clarence's house for 2 days. Curtains drawn, phones unanswered. The woman always seen with a steady gaze now shattered in solitude. Some said they heard her crying behind the study doors. Others claimed she drafted a letter to William, an appeal for explanation, or perhaps an emotional plea. But whatever words she chose, they were never read. The letter was returned, sealed, unopened, delivered not by courier, but by Catherine's most trusted aide. That, more than the letter itself, delivered the final blow. Camilla had been silenced before, but never like this. Never officially, never legally. And as the corridors of power grew colder, she realized this was not a temporary oversight. It was the end of her public ascent, not with a scandal, not with a speech, but with silence. A silence orchestrated by those closest to the crown. As Camilla unraveled, the world beyond the gates began to stir. Something seismic was coming. It started with a whisper in Parliament. Then came the headlines. Within hours, the world learned of a royal act so unthinkable it sent shockwaves through Westminster. Who leaked the truth, and why did Buckingham choose silence over denial? The first tremor surfaced in a House of Lords debate, an offhand remark, veiled in political nuance, slipped into the record by a peer long known for having sources inside the palace. He spoke of recent alterations to ceremonial designation and a reinterpretation of hereditary inclusion. At first, it sounded like bureaucratic jargon, but those paying attention knew exactly what it meant. The press didn't hesitate. Within minutes, speculation ignited across social media, and by morning, major outlets carried the question splashed across front pages. Camilla cut from Coronation. Buckingham offered no statement, no denial, just the echoing silence that confirmed everything without a single word. That silence was deafening. Commentators, constitutional experts, and former courtiers were summoned across every broadcast network to make sense of the unprecedented move. The crown had always survived storms, but never one so pointed, so personal, so quiet. The public split almost instantly. For some, William was a visionary, a prince taking a long overdue stand to honor tradition and his mother's legacy. For others, it was nothing short of royal insurrection. A calculated strike that undermined Charles's reign and tore at the very fabric of succession. But the palace's refusal to respond only deepened the crisis. Every unanswered question multiplied the fury. And for once, Buckingham wasn't controlling the narrative, it was being dragged by it. Inside the palace walls, the mood turned volatile. Staff were ordered to avoid all press inquiries. Long-time aides were reshuffled. Meetings that were once routine were either postponed or held in absolute secrecy. Charles, noticeably absent from view, cancelled multiple public engagements. The king, so often quick to reaffirm stability, now appeared shaken. Days passed without a single appearance. Rumours swirled that he had confronted William in private and been met with silent resolve. Others whispered that Camilla had threatened to walk away entirely, her role now stripped of purpose and position. The monarchy, once known for its choreographed unity, had descended into a quiet, calculated civil war. And then, in the midst of this chaos, one figure stood untouched by the storm: Catherine. The Princess of Wales said nothing, but her silence spoke volumes. She appeared at public engagements with grace, yet her presence carried new weight. Every gesture, every glance toward William was scrutinized and praised. Her calm amidst the firestorm fueled a dramatic shift in public sentiment. She wasn't just seen as a future queen, she was now viewed as a stabilizing force in a monarchy on the brink. Polls soared. Commentators declared it the beginning of a new royal age, and though she uttered not a word, the symbolism was unmistakable. Catherine stood with William, and the nation was beginning to stand with them both. But while the world debated legality, one woman sought moral clarity, and she wasn't done yet. In a rare on-camera moment, Princess Anne addressed the media. Calm but firm, she broke decades of silence. Her words cut deeper than any document. This was never about revenge. It was about protecting what was left of our mother's legacy. The interview wasn't planned. It wasn't orchestrated by Buckingham, nor was it vetted by palace advisors. It happened in passing outside an equestrian event Anne had attended for years without fanfare. A reporter, braver than most, asked the question that had lingered in headlines for days. Were you present when Prince William signed the amendment removing Camilla from coronation protocol? The Princess Royal, known for her silence and refusal to entertain gossip, didn't walk away this time. Instead, she paused, turned, and offered a statement that froze every camera. "Yes, I was present," she said. "And it was necessary." The crowd, the press, the nation, everyone held their breath. In just 2 sentences, Anne had confirmed what Buckingham refused to admit. But she wasn't finished. In her measured tone, she spoke not as a rebel, but as a guardian of something far older than any crown. Our mother believed in legacy. Not sentiment, not politics legacy. She knew the strength of the monarchy was not in how it adjusted to noise, but how it anchored itself in clarity. The message was unmistakable. This wasn't about personal grief or revenge. It was about ensuring the throne didn't drift into confusion. Anne didn't speak of Camilla by name, nor did she speak of William as her nephew. She spoke of duty, of lineage, of the promises made when her mother wore the crown and bore its burdens. This was not an act of division, she said, but of preservation, for William, for Catherine, for the future of the institution we all serve. And in that moment, the public saw not a sister or a princess, but a sentinel. Someone who had watched the palace bend under decades of modern compromise, and finally said no more. Her final line hit harder than any scandal. "If duty demands clarity, we must provide it, no matter the pain." And then, without a glance back, she walked on. That single moment shifted the conversation. What had seemed like an internal coup now looked like a royal course correction. Polls that once showed division now began to lean. Support surged for a future led by William and Catherine, not just out of admiration, but out of a growing belief that they represented stability. The silence from Charles continued, but the weight of Anne's words filled the void. She had said it plainly. This wasn't about rewriting history. It was about safeguarding it. Not for today's press, but for tomorrow's throne. And while some remained conflicted, the tide of public trust had begun to turn. Not with headlines, not with outrage, but with one woman's unshakable voice. But the final twist wouldn't come from a royal, it came from a vault no one expected to be reopened. Locked away until a moment of constitutional crisis, Queen Elizabeth's final sealed letter had one instruction: to be opened only in the event of a succession dispute involving the role of consort. What it revealed stunned even her closest confidantes. For months, the monarchy had teetered on the edge of fracture. Behind palace doors, tempers flared. Outside, public opinion shifted like a restless tide. But it was only when a senior constitutional advisor cited Clause 17, an obscure emergency directive buried in the Royal Succession Manual, that the final vault was accessed. Under extreme conditions, and with signatures from both the Sovereign's private secretary and the Lord Chamberlain, a small mahogany chest was retrieved. Inside it lay a single envelope, marked in the Queen's unmistakable script, "For my future heir." The room, filled with stewards and legal minds, fell utterly silent. It had been untouched for over a year, dated precisely 12 months before her passing. What the letter contained was not a command, but a confession written not with authority, but with wisdom earned over 70 years of rule. The Queen had seen beyond pageantry, beyond diplomacy, into the fragile bones of monarchy itself. In her own words, she wrote, "Camilla shall serve beside Charles only, not beyond. No ambiguity, no debate." The woman who had watched the world evolve around the crown made clear that her vision for the monarchy's next chapter did not include Camilla standing at the heart of its future. But it didn't end there. The letter did more than strip it restored. Elizabeth spoke of her confidence in William's sense of duty and Catherine's silent strength. She predicted storms ahead, but urged faith in their ability to weather them. And then came the part that chilled even the oldest advisors. A second sheet, handwritten and addressed solely to Anne, read, "You'll know what to do if they forget who they are." It wasn't an instruction, it was a prophecy, and Anne had already fulfilled it, without ever revealing the letter's existence until now. No statement from Charles followed, no rebuttal, no correction, because none was needed. The Queen's words didn't demand approval, they demanded obedience. In the span of 3 pages, the question of consort succession was buried. Camilla, once elevated by public sentiment and Charles's defiance, had been quietly but definitively removed from the next royal chapter. The sealed letter became more than a safeguard, it became salvation, not with noise or confrontation, but with the Queen's final voice, rising after death to ensure the crown stayed anchored in intention, not compromise. The institution, battered and exposed, found clarity in her echo. A monarch had spoken beyond the grave not to spark rebellion, but to restore course. The silence that followed wasn't emptiness. It was reverence, the kind only a ruler like Elizabeth could command. And in that silence, the monarchy breathed again, realigned, unshaken, and irrevocably changed. And so, with ink, silence, and a sister's solemn vow, the crown quietly reshaped its destiny, forever leaving Camilla behind. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.